Now, there was a rare sighting in the chamber earlier, an attempt to make a new law. But blink and you might miss it. Take a look.
Order members, first the order paper is the first stage of the community use of this bill, and I call Mr David McNarry to introduce the bill to the House. Mr Mcnarry.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I beg to introduce the Community Use of Schools Premises Bill.
The long title of the bill shall be A Bill to Make Provision for Community Use of Schools.
That constitutes the bill's first stage, and it shall now that the bill will be put on the list of future business until the date of its second stage is determined.
Premises Bill.
With me now is David McNarry. So it's significant, David. It was short, it was brief, it's only the first stage, but your legislation has begun its journey.
It has, and I wish there was more. If this executive isn't going to meet, then it's up to MLAs like me to get their work done and to bring private members' bills, and it can be done. This is my second private members' bill following my bill that's still in the realms of being debated on carers' pensions.
Let's talk about that issue for now. I mean, we're saying there is no legislation coming through because the executive isn't meeting. Is it an opportunity now for legislation to effectively be privatised down to the members? It's the way it really should be. And if you look at the business that has come out of this assembly since it began, there is a dearth of executive business. And the executive is unlikely to be bringing through many new bills. But there is room and space, as far as I'm concerned, for private members to be bringing issues such as I have brought on 2 occasions now. I think that there's an onus on them, I'd like to say, to do it, and without criticising my colleagues, which I'm not going to do. I think that can be done, and I'd like to see more coming through the committees as well. But there are technicalities involved, not least one of which is you can't duplicate something that may be pending in the executive. So you're limited in terms of the issues that you can tackle. Well, we have a great wealth of researchers here, and really you come across the issues. My bill that was introduced today basically is based on simple stuff. We have schools that close and aren't used, and I want to see them used. And that's the premise on which I worked. And I am competent in being able to bring this bill to the House to do so. So now it's in motion. And I think we need to look at a host of issues. I have a couple more that I don't want to mention exactly what they are. I have a couple more of ideas that I'm working on for further private members' bills. But I don't want to be known as Mr. Private Members' Bill. I do an awful lot of other work. But I think where I see the opportunity, I will do it. It also tests the executive. It tests the departments and it tests the committees. And I think that's a good thing.
This makes the McNarry kitchen table the main legislative factory here for Northern Ireland, given that the executive's not actually producing any legislation. I mean, do you kind of do the work around the kitchen table? Do you have the draftsman over, or how does it work?
Well, first of all, my wife's a very good cook, so we don't disrupt the kitchen table at all.
You have been meeting your wife since June. There's been no blockade on McNarry meetings.
No. And like all good politicians, I have a good wife behind me, so a lot of the inspiration comes from things that I pick up around the kitchen table. The work is done in basically, hatching the idea. Once you've hatched the idea, you then bounce it around with others. In the Ulster Unionist Party, we have an excellent backup team, so we'll bounce that around and I'll say, look, I think this makes sense, does it? We then go and talk to the researchers that are employed by the Assembly. They then do work. The Speaker then has to set aside money to do this, to get this bill even to the stage that I have. So I've got to convince him that it's worth doing. He then sends it over to the bill scribes in London, and we pay them something. Could be £2,000, could be £3,000, for them to look at all the work we've done and say, yes, it's competent, you can do it. And so long as then you get that green light, and that's where the Speaker then said today, he's satisfied and we'll move to the next stage. And it's simple.
Are you confident, though, that this will become law? Because the talk in the corridors at the moment is of a possible election.
Well, talk is cheap. What are we going to have an election for? An election just to set my bill aside, or to send the same people back with the same problem? We need to sort the problem out here, and we should be competent to do it. If we can't do that, then personally, we tell the people, look, we can't hack this. Power sharing, forget it. We're not ready for it, or whatever. And the system that we work basically is a mandatory coalition. I happen to believe a voluntary coalition would freeze up in reality what power sharing is. To be forced to do it doesn't mean that you're a convinced power sharer, and you have to take an awful. You can leave a lot aside, but to say that you're prepared to do it voluntary, then that means that whoever you're prepared to go into partnership with has to be a real partner, and that's a very, very, very tricky thing to do.
And in terms of this measure, when might it actually become law? Because I suppose if this freeze in the executive continues, you won't necessarily be squeezed out by lots of executive business, so it could maybe make its way through.
Well, Mark, I'm never going to be squeezed out by lots of executive business, even if they were fully functioning. And that's the problem of the system we have. As I say, there is an onus on private members like me to bring this forward. In answer to your question, I would like to think it could take 12 to 15 months. It has to go through the committee, have to get the support of the committee, and then it has to go to the department. The other thing that I'm conscious of in both my bills is the financial state. I'm bringing a very important motion to the Assembly tomorrow on the finance of the Executive and of the Assembly, and I hope we'll get a lot of answers that will be able to see exactly what we can do, because I feel that not only is the country being squeezed, but this legislature is being squeezed as well.
David McNarry, many thanks indeed.